he was actually out, so he's new in the job, and he was out with his crews and went to a lot of these road trauma events on the weekend. So I think he's going to speak a little bit about what he saw and the impact on his people and stuff like that too. So I wanted to be part of it.
Okay, cool.
All good. All right, if you guys are ready, I'll bring them in.
Yeah, sure.
I'm glad that you're here because I was like,
And we'll just, if you guys are happy, we'll just get them to speak and we'll just do questions last.
Say again, sorry, what was that?
We'll just get both of them to speak and then
spill?
we'll do questions after if you're cool.
Easy, no problems.
Cool.
Since Friday.
yeah. Right. Grangehead 1, Uranga 1, Belinda 3, Montana 1, Chelmsford 2, Bentley 1, Adams 1.
Norland 1, Bentley 1, Grangefields 1, Belinda 3. How do you spell it? Is it Bangor?
Buanga.
Buanga 1, Montana 1, Templestowe 2.
Yeah.
Buangor.
I always pronounced it Buanga when I worked in the
Buangor. The more you say that, the worse it sounds.
Or afternoon, I should say.
Afternoon, evening, good morning. Right, so just all right, so good to go? Yep. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Assistant Commissioner Glenn Weir from Road Policing Command. I'm here today with Jordan Emery, the CEO of Ambulance Victoria, just to discuss the completely unacceptable surge in trauma that we've seen since Friday. So between Friday and this morning, there have been 10 collisions that have resulted in 9 lives lost. So when you think about that, in the whole month of June, we had 12 lives lost, which is a really low figure. So to lose 9 lives in 72 hours is absolutely devastating. And the frustrating part is that most of the lives that have been lost have been completely avoidable. The lives lost over the last 3 days bring the current toll to 159 lives lost. So when you talk about numbers, that's a number is 159. That's 159 people who've lost their lives and 159 groups of family, friends who are all impacted. And that's the real cost that we see, that human loss of life. So that's the highest number of lives lost at this stage of the year since 2011. So a 14-year high. And that cannot be allowed to continue. So we are working really hard to try and reduce the lives lost, but we can't do it on our own, and we need everyone to help us. The frustrating part from my perspective is that when you go back and unpack all the collisions, and even the ones in the last 72 hours, there are significant opportunities to avoid the trauma, and yet people are still making the same mistakes in terms of single acts of non-compliance or taking risks or behaviours that are completely unacceptable. At least 2 of these collisions we know lives have been lost because people made a choice to drive whilst impaired on alcohol, including, we suspect, a double fatality this morning at Templestowe, which is the main line of inquiry, is around the offending driver who's under guard in hospital, and we suspect that that person was impaired on a Monday morning. it's incredibly frustrating when people going about their normal business on a Monday morning, going to work, to and from school, going shopping, just living their lives, should be confronted with someone who makes that outrageous decision to be impaired. And we've seen the result of that. We are working really hard with all aspects of the road safety partnership across government and TAC to try and identify what else we can do. We've got a meeting this afternoon that we've called to try and address those behaviours and see what else there is that we can do. But we can all keep working really hard and be focused and run operations and try and be as visible as we can and enforce where we can. But unless larger parts of the community come on the journey with us, we will continue to see significant trauma like this. I'm happy to discuss any of the individual collisions and lives lost incidents if there are any specific questions. But at this stage, I'll pass over to Jordan because it's not just the police that are seeing this. Naturally, all of our emergency service partners, and primarily including our partners at Ambulance Victoria, are really feeling the impact as well of this. So I'll ask Jordan to talk to that.
Thank you so much. As Assistant Commissioner Weir said, it has been an horrific weekend, 72 hours, 10 very significant motor vehicle collisions, 9 lives lost, hundreds upon hundreds of people impacted as a result of those incidents. And of course, we extend our deepest condolences to the families, friends and loved ones of those who have perished in these last 72 hours. But I also plead with the community to consider the significant impacts that incidents such as this have on our first responders, police, fire authorities, and of course, our communications centre, personnel, ambulance community officers and paramedics who attend these very tragic and traumatic incidents. And it doesn't simply stop at the roadside. The people impacted by these incidents are treated in our emergency departments and operating theatres. They undergo months and years of treatment and rehabilitation, and that impacts their lives and the lives of many other people around them. And so, as Assistant Commissioner Weir has said, we make a plea, a desperate plea to the community to please consider the role you play in your safety on our roads. Consider the simple acts you can take to keep yourself and other road users safe, because these tragic occurrences turn on a dime. They happen in a split second, a short instant, and people's lives are changed fundamentally because of it. So please think about the role and responsibility you have as a road user. Slow down. Think about the impact of fatigue. Think about other road users and wildlife that might be around you. And please drive safely on Victoria's roads.
Thanks, Jordan. Well said. So have you got any, if there are any questions for Jordan or myself?
If we can go through the incidents of this morning.
Sure.
If we can start with One Turner.
Sure.
Kind of explain, it looks like the collisions happened at an intersection. What actually?
Yeah, so this has only happened a few hours ago, so the investigation is still in the early stages, but it appears at this early stage that a motorcyclist travelling along Mountain Highway, a vehicle has failed to give way whilst turning and turned in front of that motorcycle. And as a result of that, the motorcyclist has struck the vehicle and is deceased at the scene. This is preliminary, but that's how it appears at this stage at One Turner. The incident in Templestowe, a bit later in the morning, a couple of hours ago, it appears as though a vehicle on Fitzsimmons Lane has crossed to the wrong side of the road and collided with a smaller compact vehicle head-on, and the 2 people in that second vehicle are deceased. As I mentioned earlier, the driver of that vehicle is in hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, is my understanding, and is under police guard and will be interviewed at a time when they're able to be.
Is One Turner as the driver in custody, assisting police?
Yeah, is currently assisting police and being interviewed, yep.
Given it sort of appears to be failing to give way, do you anticipate charges?
Look, it's early. We'll go through the whole process, and if at the appropriate time, be that today or later on, that there is the evidence that leads to charges being laid, that will happen, and we'll notify people. But you know, we'll go through the investigation. These things can be quite protracted. I just want to point out and thank all the members, the High Patrol, General Police, and particularly the Major Collision Investigation Unit. They've had a really, really big few days, and the resilience of those people is amazing. And Jordan talked about the impact on staff, and certainly the detectives at Major Collision. They're not an infinite resource, and they've responded to multiple incidents over the last few days, and they'll do the same at both of those collisions this morning. They will investigate and follow the evidence where it leads.
You mentioned the meeting that's being held this afternoon.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that? And has that been sort of called on the basis of what we've seen?
No, it was called in response to you know, what we've seen this year so far. Even though June was a significantly low month, we are still above the 5-year average and where we want to be. So that meeting was called, was organised late Friday, but of course the events of the weekend and today give it special and more pressing necessity. So it's ourselves, the Transport Accident Commission, Transport Vic, and Department of Justice and Community Safety who look after the road safety camera program.
I know you mentioned that the driver from Templestowe appears to have been impaired. When you hear that, and now we've got 2 innocent lives gone, where does your mind go?
I mean, this is, you know, it is a constant source of frustration and not anger, but it is because the frailty of human life, right? I mean, these people who make these decisions to get behind the wheel and drive when they're impaired, either by drugs or alcohol or both, who are behind the wheel when they shouldn't be, so they're unauthorised, they've either been disqualified or suspended or unlicensed. Those people make a conscious decision to do that, conscious decision. And we investigate, we prosecute where appropriate, and we really hope that those people are held to account at the highest levels by the judiciary, because they've made a conscious choice to do something that has resulted in the loss of people's lives. So the detectives at Major Collision treat this, you know, very similar to a homicide investigation. Someone has undertaken an act that has resulted in the death of another person. There's no coming back from that. It's unforgiving. And until people get their head around that it won't happen to me, well, guess what? So far this year, it has happened to a lot of people. And it is frustrating for us.
Your members obviously go and speak to the families of these victims. I can only imagine how they would be feeling when tonight on the news they hear that driver was impaired and they've lost their loved ones.
Yeah, and I mean that's an allegation at this stage that will need to be proven. So we need to be a little bit put some context around that. But I mean, the loss of someone, family, friend, colleague, is devastating. And when in the course of time the evidence comes out and plays out quite often in judicial proceedings and people hear the facts of the matter and the evidence, it sort of, you know, it's that re-trauma. People go through a lot, you know, it's a notification, then dealing with that over the next days, weeks, months, and then going through the court process. It's unforgiving and it's there forever. Then the birthdays, Christmas, other anniversaries, it's real. That's what my appeal to people is who take these risks. It's real. It's not a game. People are dying, and we need to do something to change the community's attitude. And it's not just in Victoria. This is happening all over Australia. We are seeing significant trauma all over Australia by people taking the same risks.
You mentioned alongside Templestowe one of the other incidents involving some sort of impairment. Which one was that?
So that was the one out near Melton, the motorcycle on Sunday morning, yesterday morning.
That was
at Grangefields.
Yes, gotcha, Grangefields.
And again, these are allegations that we're making. We go through the process, we consider and gather the evidence, and then if there is enough evidence to prosecute, we will. But that's the early indication.
You did mention the Major Collision detectives. They've been so busy. What kind of toll does this take on your resources and
Yeah.
their mental state?
So, you know, you have a lot of things that keep you awake at night, and the welfare of your staff and their well-being is, and I'm sure Jordan would be the same about the impact that it is having on people who are professional people, highly trained, very capable people, but the constant wear and tear on them physically, emotionally, is something that we're very cognizant of, and we put a lot of time and effort into supporting them. But it is probably the number one thing I worry about is the welfare of my people who are going through these incidents every day.
When do you think this road safety message is going to sink in with people?
I reckon that question's been asked since we first had cars. And when you think back to, 50 years ago, just over 50 years ago, when there was over 1,000 people killed on Victorian roads, when our population was about half what it is now. I can't imagine what that must have been like for people in my position or Jordan's position back then, dealing with that level of trauma. But the thing is now, it's still the same thing. It's the frustration around the avoidable nature of most of these things. That say for a decision to get in and drive, a decision to go a little bit over the speed limit, a decision to, I'll make that traffic light, and it ends up in the worst possible scenario time and time again. So until people realise that, recognise that, and get over the sense of entitlement and arrogance that seems to be prevalent, that entitlement and arrogance is the thing that is driving road trauma.
Just at today's meeting, the road crisis meeting?
Well, I mean, what's a crisis? Like we're in crisis as usual at the moment. Like we none of us accept the levels of trauma that we're currently seeing. None of us. None of the road safety partners accept that. The trick is to get the community not to accept it. So we'll be looking at ways today to what else can we do? What else can we double down on? Given our resources, funding, it's not infinite. We need to work within an envelope and a bubble. But how can we get the best and most effective outcomes from that?
Does the state of the road conditions, does that play a role at all in what we're seeing and what we've seen in the last few days?
So it certainly plays a role in our investigations. Every fatal and serious injury collision, we look at a number of factors, and road conditions is one of them. I have to say that on my brief, so far what I know about this recent spate, none of the condition of the roads has not had anything to play with either the cause or that impact of the fatal collisions. A number of them are head-on or from the rear, so or pedestrian. Like there's nothing that would indicate to me that any of these are caused by anything to do with the roads. That said, this year we've had a disproportionate number of lives lost on country roads, high-speed country roads. So whether or not the roads are fit for the speed, rather than the condition of the road, that's a separate issue, but are they fit for the condition of the speed limit that is posted? And that's a question I'll be asking and discussing this afternoon with Transport Victoria.
I was going to follow up the conditions of the road, but the parameters that each road is bound by. Are you seeing? Do you feel like that might be having an impact on what we're seeing?
Oh, look, ideally every road in Victoria would have big, wide shoulders. They would have, either rope barriers or Armco barriers at every road. Victoria's got the second largest road network in Australia. It's a lot of road. It's extremely expensive to outfit all of the roads with the infrastructure that mitigates risk, but you can only mitigate to a certain degree. The part that people can control is their own behaviour. So that's what I'm appealing to people to do. Jordan?
I know you've been out and about and with some of the paramedics that have responded to these crashes. Can you talk us?
Yeah, I spent some time in the Grampians region yesterday up at Ballarat, where one of the patients was transported following the fatal motor vehicle collision out towards Ararat. And of course, this incident and the many other incidents that Assistant Commissioner Weir has talked about impact on our people. They are distressing, the scenes are distressing. They are often dangerous scenes with other road users posing risks to our paramedics and first responders who are on site. And of course, we're talking about small regional communities. The Ambos live in those communities. They go to school and work and community events with members of the community, family members of the victim. So that has a significant impact on their well-being.
I know that they're more than just numbers, but when we see the numbers that we've seen in recent days, is that something that gets noticed by your staff and you know, when there's a real high concentration of incidents like this, and does that impact upon your staff?
It's certainly the case that our teams work across radios. They hear these incidents being broadcasted. They hear patients being flown or driven to hospital under urgent conditions because their injuries are so serious or life-threatening, and that impacts on the overall feeling or concern amongst our people. Paramedics and police and other emergency service workers get into this work generally because they have a deep regard and care for their community and they want to give back. And so I think it's true, as Assistant Commissioner Weir said, that it can be frustrating, exasperating even, to see simple, often careless decisions that really impact on the life and well-being of the community and lots of other people around this specific incident itself.
Yourself and all the other paramedics, I mean, your job, you want to save lives. How does it affect you when you get to a scene, you have that goal, and you just can't do anything?
Yeah. Look, I know from my experience as a paramedic attending some of these incidents, it is traumatic. There are some circumstances, particularly very serious trauma, where we know, despite the incredible skill and expertise of our paramedics, ACOs and comm centre staff here in Victoria, that we cannot resuscitate those people. Their injuries are too significant. And that is tough. It is tough to walk away from a patient with significant injuries and know that nothing can be done to save their life. But I'm also incredibly heartened by the fact that, confronted with that, my team every day roll up their sleeves and get out and give the very best clinical care to Victorians, to other people injured in those accidents. And that is what fuels me and so many other leaders across AV to continue supporting our people to care for Victorian communities.
How relied upon are HEMS at the moment? I mean, they've been so busy the past 72 hours.
Yeah, our HEMS, or Helicopter Emergency Medical Services team, are a remarkable bunch of people as well. Our Micah flight paramedics service the whole state of Victoria from 5 operational bases, and they've responded to a number of these incidents. So they are a critical part of our network of support. They ensure we get the highest skilled paramedics to the most critically ill and injured patients, no matter where they are across the state. And we've relied on their expertise in the last few days to provide the very best care to these patients, alongside our ALS paramedics, which are some of the highest trained paramedics across Australia and who bring all of their education, skills and technical expertise to bear when they're confronted with these very distressing road crash incidents.
Would you say the past 72 hours they've responded to more than usual incident?
Well, I think, as Assistant Commissioner Weir has said, this is unprecedented. We're seeing almost similar numbers in 72 hours as we saw all of last month. And that is felt by VicPol, by AV. We feel the impact of that surge in activity, that surge in loss of life and trauma. And my team have been incredibly busy responding to these cases over the weekend, as have our other road safety partners.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. Well done, Jordan.